Sometimes a threat to literally the smallest things can have massive ramifications for those of us higher up on the both figurative and literal food chain, and bees are an amazing example of that. Joining us to break down the current plight of bees is CEO and co-founder of Bee Golden, Kevin Cook. Welcome to the studio.
Oh, welcome, thank you.
Glad to have you here. So I have heard that bees are having a rough time of it.
You would be correct.
So how bad is it? How bad has the last year or so been for bee populations?
It has been astronomically bad. So we are facing what would be considered a catastrophic ecological collapse of bees worldwide and domestically. So what we're experiencing is something called CCD, or colony collapse disorder. So colony collapse disorder it's a range, it's a host of things creating what we see as a perfect storm for decimating the honeybee population. A lot of those contributing factors, really play into the larger agricultural industry, period. One of them being pesticides, insecticides, herbicides, things of that nature. And so we've kind of stepped back and looked at the problem. And in 2008, CCD kind of came out, and it was what's really going on. And then as they started to investigate different areas, we started to see the big picture come out, and it's been bad.
Yeah, and I think I saw in some of the materials you provided that over the last winter, something like 40% were eliminated.
And even higher. We've seen up to 80 and 90% of losses in colonies.
Yeah, and look, we were talking during the break about the amount of birds, forest creatures that had died. And when you see things like 40-50% over the course of half a century, here we're talking about like while we were waiting for the next season of The Good Place to come out. Like,
absolutely.
That was like, it's such a short time span. And just to be clear, you sort of alluded to this, but this isn't just a California thing, this isn't just a US thing, we're seeing this across the globe. Are there areas where they're taking efforts, they're doing something differently and they're resistant to these deaths?
So, yes and no. So the powers that may be seem to be hindering the process, but independent scientific associations and beekeepers, worldwide are pushing forward efforts to try to mitigate some of these issues. Some of the concerns we've had is with the EPA and their sort of lack of response to true and real scientific data. So we have something that we've seen as a significant issue, and these are pesticides, two of which are astronomically bad for bees. One of them has been around for quite some time. They're called neonicotinoids. Neonicotinoids are sort of a new nicotine, so to speak, type of chemical. The next one is sulfoxaflor, which is a sulfoxamine.
I've read about that one.
Sulfoxaflor is almost identical in what it does to pollinators as a neonicotinoid. And their conditional registration of this was based off of scientific research done by the companies who are putting them into the market.
Yeah.
Sulfoxaflor was produced by formerly known Dow Agrochemicals, right? And so what we see is those are supposed to, coat the plant and create, this environment for insect, less environment. But what we're seeing is they're doing substantial damage to the pollinators.
Yeah. Yeah, and we'll return in just a minute to what the EPA and the Trump administration is doing in this area. But just in case people have gotten into this far into the interview and they don't get yet why this is a huge issue. Like maybe they think to lose any animal is bad, sure. Maybe to lose honey, hypothetically. So you co-founded a company that produces honey.
Correct.
But okay, so I think it's weird to not have honey anymore. But let's say that wasn't people's biggest concern. Why should they still be worried about bees potentially going extinct?
Okay, so the ramifications of the bee or pollinators like the bee go extinct is worse than you could even imagine. Okay, so first and foremost, honeybees are responsible for more than 30% of the food we eat. Period, full stop.
In terms of pollination?
In terms of pollination, and then we could take it a step further and say, well, do you like dairy products? Do you like beef? Well, guess what? All of the food that these dairy cows eat are from pollinator services like alfalfa and hay and things that bees pollinate.
Yeah.
Okay, we could take it a step further. Do you like wearing t-shirts? Well, most of t-shirts have cotton, and what do we rely on to produce that? Pollination services.
Yeah.
Here's the biggest one. Do you like drinking coffee?
All the time.
Well, guess what? That would be in danger. You would no longer be able to have, that type of coffee for the price. I mean, it just is a fallout of catastrophic proportions.
Yeah. So, and I think it's great that you make it clear in so many different areas that it might seem to people remote, a bee off somewhere, but they affect things that we consume and wear, as you showed all the time. So, in terms of this administration, there are these new concerns about these pesticides. Some of them are not new concerns. You said that the EPA is apparently not particularly interested in doing anything about it. Does Trump seem to show any interest in dealing with this issue?
I haven't seen a peep, wink nor snore about any interest in helping or pushing the agenda along to save pollinators. Look, this is the thing. The EPA is doing what they consider to be the best they can, right? But they're influenced by a $1 billion plus industry in these, chemical substances. So, I mean, just to put it in perspective, pollinating services worldwide are a $250+ billion industry, right? And so what we see is a fallout from these issues if bees disappear. The EPA, they haven't really taken into consideration the true independent scientific research data, which definitively says these are extremely harmful for bees. You know what I mean? And the issue with that is, if you see it, do something about it. And nothing is being done about it.
Yeah, and look, I know that when it comes to like climate change, they'll say, oh no, we don't trust the scientists. Some people say, I think it's solar flares that are doing it. So what exactly is killing 80-90% of the bees in some areas? Like kids with rocks? Like what is actually wiping them out?
So you actually kind of hit the nail on the head. I mean, obviously, the human species and human society is so interconnected with nature. Whether we want to admit that or not is another issue. But we are, right? And the fact of the matter is, bees being such an important creature, we're looking at a host of things. It's not just one thing that's killing it, but yeah, the fragmentation of land, the warming of the planet, erratic weather cycles, all of these things are causing, the bees to lose habitable land, right? The next is pesticides, herbicides, but we're also seeing immunological diseases that come from, these mites like the Varroa destructor mite or the Paracarpus woody. These mites are probably one of the bigger factors that are killing this. And what happens is these neonicotinoids and these sulfoxaflor, these pesticides, the mites are becoming very resistant and resilient to these things over the exposure for long periods of time. So it's not affecting them as much. The Varroa destructor mite is entirely dependent upon the bee. It really only is what attacks the bee, and it goes into the colonies. It creates the immunological disorders like the deformed wing virus, where we see the brood in different generations of bees becoming weaker and slower. They used to pollinate for 9 days. Now they're only pollinating for 4 days. In 1988 we had 5 million hives. Today we have 2.5 million hives. It's 50% loss. This is catastrophic, and no one is doing anything on a bigger level. Like on the national level to take it on, nothing's being done.
Exactly, yeah, and so as I alluded to in the intro, this is the sort of issue that because it seems small or remote, like the creatures we're talking about are small and sometimes remote. It seems like something we don't have to focus on, but clearly we do because the consequences could be devastating.
Absolutely.
Kevin Cook, CEO, co-founder of Bee Golden, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
Bring it down. Incredibly important issue.
Absolutely.
For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/thedamagereport. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.